Let's bring in our political panel now. David Gazzard from DPG Advisory and former Liberal advisor, Ben Oquist, Executive Director of the Australia Institute and former advisor with the Greens. David, this spat with the states, it's not great, particularly when the vaccine rollout's already running behind schedule.
I think the characterisation of it as a spat is entirely correct. I think it's a skirmish. It'll be a skirmish at the very outer markers of political debate. It'll be here today and gone tomorrow. It serves the states while they're going through lockdowns again for Easter in Brisbane and the Blues Festival in New South Wales to sort of try to pin this on the feds. The feds were at pains today to say, let's look at what unites, not what divides. And there is good evidence that I'm told there's good evidence that says there is no way any of these parties want to have a fight, because as soon as you have a fight, the voters and the population that's genuinely concerned about receiving the vaccine thinks they'll be dudded. So there is absolutely nothing in it for either level of government to be fighting about it. And the other thing is it ignores the fact that we are miles in front of the rest of the world. We have had struggles to get supply. We're building up to that supply, but comparatively, we've done so much better, and we've been incredibly united through the process over the last year. So everyone's worked together. It serves their purposes to have a bit of a spat today, as you correctly identify, but I guarantee they'll move on quickly.
And if they can speed up the delivery, I think the Health Minister had used a bit of hyperbole today when he said the rollout's been extraordinary, because obviously they're behind schedule. But if they can speed it up and they get close to having everyone vaccinated by October, things do shift really fast, don't they, in terms of the perception of how it's all managed?
Yeah, well, it's how it ends that will count rather than how it starts. But I think there is a perception problem for the government, the idea that we're leading the world. Yes, we're leading the world in dealing with COVID, but we're not leading the world in dealing with the vaccine. And so when it's seen to be kind of overhyping how well it's doing, I think the public can rightly say, "Oh, this is a bit odd. We're not leading the world. You know, look how Britain's vaccination rates are." There is a little bit of a problem, I think, from the government that they've seen to have under-promised on the vaccine, now under-delivered on how far it rolls out. Now, this blame shifting, I accept it doesn't do anyone any good, but I think the risk on the blaming each other, the risk is on the Commonwealth more than the states. We've been tracking kind of which level of government people think is doing a better job on COVID response, and they consistently say the states over the feds. And I think it's just a bit risky for the government, more risky for the federal government to get into a fight. Finally, who started this spat? It was Littleproud last night blaming the government. I think it's a bit cute for the Prime Minister to say, look, I'm not blaming the states at all, and having Littleproud out there strongly having a go at the states. And I think the public will mark down the feds for starting the fight.
Look, this actually hasn't started there at all. It started with the fact that this has spread again and it's gone down across state borders, and it's handy to have a scapegoat for the states for doing that. But be that as it may, I tell you where we do lead, and that's in deaths. There has been no deaths since when in Australia? We have led in almost every marker, but that's the most important one. We are, I tell you who's rolled out the vaccine faster. It is the states or the countries that have been in absolute crisis, that have had to take it forward before it's been tested properly. Australia has had a quite constrained manner in testing and making sure it's efficacious.
Do you think the Prime Minister's got... well, this is where a lot of people's focus will be, but for a big chunk of the population, the electorate right now, in the last few weeks, it's been on the treatment of women, and will remain their primary concern up until the next election. So let's move on to that issue if we can, because I'm just wondering, the government's taken a big hit on that. Do you think that the Prime Minister's been able to regroup enough on that? He looks like in the last couple of weeks he's been rattled from time to time on this, hasn't really found his level on it. Do you think he has now?
I think that's your characterisation of it. I think we saw an important step this week with the announcement of Marise Payne into a very, very senior role around her ministership involving women, and the appointment of a range of senior ministers that now have full carriage of this issue. I think behind the scenes to the announcement of a task force that involves all the cabinet women and all the central agencies will be an important way of actually getting those voices into the policy debates that we need to have. You know, the lens that's applied across policy, as Marie said. But, you know, I think it's now in the situation where that has to be rolled out over the next few months, and that will be the true test of what you're saying, Kieran.
Just 30 seconds left, Ben.
Yeah, the proof will be in the pudding. Are they actually going to produce results? I think the problem remains for them that, yes, while they've promoted women into cabinet, they're not very well-known women. And the Labor side has better-known women like Keneally and Wong and Tanya Plibersek, and the government's constantly held back by not having high-profile cabinet ministers. And Marise Payne, for all her potential good work, she doesn't do it in the public, and that's holding them back. And already some of those new ministers who have got these key economic portfolios for women are saying, we're not going to put a gender lens on the budget. Unless they start doing that, they're going to continue to be marked down by not a small section of the population, but this is a big issue for 52% and a lot of men too.
Ben, thank you. David, talk to you next week.
The bottom 20% get nothing. They're really unfair tax cuts.
People want to see much stronger action from the government when it comes to climate change.
It's no coincidence that we have a wages crisis in Australia.
Transitioning to net zero emissions, it doesn't seem like there's much room for gas.